Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So I have a different kind of video. It's kind of, I guess you could say, video essay or something. But today I want to talk about screen adaptation. Yes, this is when you take a material, whether it be like a book, a video game, a play, etc. And maybe even, historical events, real life events, and you turn it into a film or a television series. Now, adaptations have been a part of the film industry since the beginning. According to Susan Hayward, there are 3 types of adaptations: literary, classic, plays, and contemporary text. Now, you might be saying this leaves out, real-world events or history. That's because Hayward only talks of literary adaptation, which is understandable because it's the most common one. To begin, one must understand that film is very different from any, written medium. Films tell stories differently. I mean, there's images, music, camera angles, sets, dialogue, you get the idea. The audience or viewer watches it. Now, a book is a much more active form of storytelling. Well, I should say that when a person is reading it, it's more active. It requires a person to read the words on the page, and the words form sentences, and the person pictures the story world, the characters in their head. And you may even have access to the protagonist's thoughts, considering first person versus a third-person point of view. Now, if it's a traditional 3-act Hollywood film structure, the protagonist has a goal. They want something, but they also have a wound and a weakness. The wound creates the weakness. They're living in their world suboptimally. And an antagonist, of course, gets in the way of their goal and or want. They go on their journey, there's conflict. Then by the end, the character either gets what they want or they don't, or they learn a lesson. Or if, the protagonist doesn't learn a lesson, the secondary character learns the lesson. Also entertainment. People connect with the characters. People have to care in order to watch. You have to capture their attention. Books and history are riddled with a bunch of details that are not always necessary for use in a film. Oh my gosh, did that just fall? Sorry. The same way that we can cut and post using editing, we have to cut out what we don't need when it comes to adapting a material into film. Adapting isn't easy. One must determine what the story is about, or if you want to put it in a more simple term, theme. With a historical event, one even has to choose who the protagonist is. Then the writer can proceed with writing the screenplay based on theme and character. So when you're taking a real life event the sexual harassment scandal in Fox News, which was present in Bombshell. That's based off of a real thing that happened. You have to take all this information. Maybe you have newspaper articles. Maybe you have watched, news coverage about it. And the person has to ask themselves, who's the main character? And you have to ask, and then they, obviously, I watched this movie. It was obviously Megyn Kelly in the film. And then you have to ask yourself, the person had to ask themselves, well, what is it about? And it was, about having these women's voices heard, and people need to know the truth, and justice needs to be served, and etc. Usually when you're adapting real-life events or his history into a film, there is typically a message. We were taught history so we don't make the same mistakes that we made in the past. So there's a message. So obviously when they go about writing the film, they're like, okay, we know the theme. We also are going to give across a message. and you're dealing with a character. Now in the film, I've watched the film and I watched the response that, Megyn Kelly posted on her YouTube channel, where she talked about with other women who had experienced this and who actually were portrayed in the film. They actually talked about it, saying what the film got wrong, what the film got right. And I wrote down some things, and I think I have answers for why things were added in, why things were switched or wrong, and why things, they kept, untouched. And obviously this has to do with character, it has to do with payoff and everything. And before I talk about that, I also need to mention that when it comes to when people are adapting books into movies or history, especially into movies, like real life, people tend to be oh, well, that was in the movie, that didn't happen. There's one group of people who are just it shouldn't be in there if it didn't actually happen. But people don't understand. It's you're telling a story, it's about a character, and it's entertainment, and basically, it doesn't matter that the person is real. The moment you're putting it into a script or, format, they become a character. Sure, it's based off of real events. Even before Bombshell begins, you see the first scene, it even has a little blurb in there saying that, this is based off of real events, but things, names have been changed, things have been added, details have been moved around, or I can't remember how they worded it, but they were basically saying, hey, yeah, it's based off of something that actually happened, but some of the things are not, correct, and that's for dramatic or whatever entertainment purposes, however they worded it. I'll have to find it and post it in the video. I don't know. But, for instance, I think of Mary Queen of Scots, where Mary Queen of Scots was a real queen. She was the Queen of Scotland. And, Elizabeth was a real queen who was alive at the time. And then a lot of people, kind of spoiler alert, it's kind of spoiled in the trailer, so I don't think it's really much of a spoil, but in Mary Queen of Scots, both Mary and Elizabeth, they communicate via letters throughout most of the film. And then eventually there's a scene where they meet and they talk face to face. And that obviously did not happen in real life. They actually, I think I remember reading that they actually never met, at all. Either of their, during their lifetimes, they did not meet. They were cousins, but they never met. And they just sort of communicated via, post. Well, not post, just letters. So, they were in different countries at the time. So, Mary meeting Elizabeth in the film was a great payoff. In the film, it's a great payoff. It's a great moment because, these women finally talk to each other face to face versus just simply oh, this is all I know of her, via letters. In the film, it's a great payoff. Obviously, they didn't meet in real life, but for, the rules of drama and, I guess entertainment, it's a great thing that they meet. I didn't mind it. I was hey, and what's great about historical fiction and stuff being adapted into film, into a narrative, is that people can look up what they got right, what they got wrong. That's what we do even with biopics. Even when the person who is the subject of the biopic is alive and they were a part of it, they're still not going to get everything 100% correct. And there are reasons for it. I think people need to just decide at the end of the day if they want a stone-cold accurate documentary or an entertaining narrative film that's about something. And the moment, like I said, they become characters, they become versions of a real person. They're not exactly the real person. It's a person, it's Saoirse Ronan playing Mary, Queen of Scots. That's what it is. It's you know, it's a character. It's not necessarily like, oh my gosh, like it's the exact person. They become a character, you know? That's what it is. So anyway, back to Bombshell. Obviously, Megyn Kelly was saying they got a lot right. They got a lot wrong. The women that were there, they were discussing it after they watched it, and they said that the harassment, that whole experience was a lot worse than the movie portrayed it to be. For instance, there were some things that they said that were not true. For instance, that Megyn Kelly said she didn't run her debate question by anyone. She didn't, tell anybody what her debate question. She has a question about, that she gives at a debate, to Donald Trump about women. And apparently in the film, they acted like, oh yeah, she ran it by people. And then she also said that Roger Ailes didn't like her question about women. And I think it's to build her character up as she's this strong woman. I mean, Megyn Kelly has had her own show on Fox News. She's this strong woman. She's probably the most powerful one in, all of Fox at that time. I don't know. I'm just guessing. And I think what they were doing, because later they were setting with him liking in the movie the question about, women in the film. I think what it was they were setting it up for the reveal of it being shocking, for you to be shocked at the reveal that Megyn Kelly was harassed by her boss. I think that's what it was. I think it was they switched it for the film because they were like, okay, it seems like they're buddies and that he doesn't do anything creepy to her for whatever reason. They're trying to get you to think that. So that way you realize, wow, the most powerful woman in this, world, in this, whole entire broadcast network is actually, it was done to her too. I think it was to build her up and give you that, and then it was for a more shocking reveal. That is what I think. I don't know what the writers and the producers and the directors' thought process was, but that's, I think, why it was changed. That's my personal thing. I also automatically knew pretty much that Margot Robbie's character was not a real person. She was added in. And I think it was mainly just to add to the effect of, what happens to people who are young and they're entering. You had Megyn, at the start of the film who had been at Fox News for many years, and then you have another woman who's been there for many years, and she starts the whole thing of going to lawyers and starting and going to sue this man, and then you have the woman. It's like the three different stages, I guess, or there's these three different scenarios, and then you have the woman who's new, and I think that's what it was for, of showing it went on back in the day and it still goes on. And so, yeah, that's my whole thought process as of why they added her in, of somebody who it's happening to currently, and things like that do happen. And then so that they can have that contrast with, yeah, that happened in the past as well, of a woman who, you have the woman that's seeking justice, and she starts the whole thing, and she's like, I'm going to sue, everybody, or I'm going to sue the guy. He's going to pay for it, basically. And then you have the woman that was in the past and doesn't know what to do, because she doesn't want to be the story. She doesn't want to be front and center, because she's already was with the whole Donald Trump, with her and against her on Twitter and saying horrible things about her. And then you have the girl that it's happening to, and she's scared, doesn't want to say anything. I think that's what it was, and it makes it nice and equal. I think that's why they did that. But there is a great scene, and it was, for the longest time, I think that's all the trailer is. It's just the Margot Robbie, Charlize, and Nicole Kidman in an elevator, and there's no way that actually happened in real life, because obviously Margot Robbie's character is not real. But one of the women said, I can't remember her name, said that she was moved and she cried at that scene because it created, it put her back in that time of what happened. It's like, honor your way to see that guy. And they even said that Margot Robbie's scenes were very close to what actually happened. All the feelings and all the horrible effects that has on a person. And they said that the spin scene where they ask you to spin, it was very real. So once again, and I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned this, but they felt it was a very powerful movie, and that they created a good job. They did a good job of creating a dynamic of what it was like to be harassed. And so once again, yes, the movie got a lot wrong, or got some things wrong and details wrong, but it still got that message across. It still got what it was like to be harassed, what it was like to go through it. Even though that whole thing is worse in real life, it still got that feeling across. And watching it, and there's a scene where you see Margot Robbie literally get harassed, and it's very inappropriate. It's very intense to watch. I think I looked away, or I was like, it's so hard to watch. So I really do think that is the difference between, a documentary versus, a narrative. It also helps get your message across, because, with historical fiction, I think of historical fiction as well. If you want people to reject things or rise up against something like, whether it be racism or sexual harassment, it's important to get to know a character and to spend time with the character, and you feel empathy for them, and then you introduce these real things that happened. And then people are inspired to kind of look up of something that really happened, or what is the facts, because you feel the things they're feeling in a way. You're able to see the world through their eyes, and you really, with a narrative form, instead of just having facts thrown at me, if I'm reading like a textbook or if I'm watching a documentary, it's a lot, it's kind of more boring in that way. It doesn't mean that like those whole, like any tragic events are less tragic. It's just, you kind of hammer home, you really hammer, what's the word? You kind of really get your point across a lot easier, and it sticks more when you see these real people go through something. And narrative form is just the way to go, in my opinion. Whether it means you have to create a character and put them in that time period, or like what they did with Bombshell, but they mixed it with real people who exist, or you're just choosing, or you have to obviously choose the protagonist, and then you dive in with, what is this story about? And that it works the best that way, in my opinion, of hammering it home, like, this is the message of what you can get from this real life event. Don't get me wrong, like, some people can do a very bad job when it comes to, like, they just don't know, it's obvious when you sit down and you watch a movie and they don't know what the heck they're talking about, or they don't know what they want to get across. But yeah, that's basically adaptation. That's all I have to say about it so far. And Yeah. Have a lovely day.